It was a Saturday in late June, one of those sweltering North Carolina afternoons where the humidity clings to you like a second skin and the cicadas buzz so loud you'd swear they're staging a protest. The clock had just ticked past 10 a.m. when I fired up Bertha, my pride and joy, a 500-pound smoker I'd welded together with my buddy Mike, a metal worker who owed me big after I talked the fire marshal out of shutting down his shop over a rogue propane tank. Bertha's no off-the-shelf grill, she's a double-walled steel beast with 4 racks, a firebox that could roast a hog whole, and a chimney that pumps out smoke like a factory stack on overtime. That morning, I'd loaded her with a rack of St. Louis ribs, meaty, marbled beauties I'd rubbed down the night before with my signature blend. Brown sugar for that caramel crust, smoked paprika for depth, a whisper of cayenne for bite, and a secret pinch I've never spilled, not even to my ex-wife. The hickory chips were smoldering, sending a sweet, woody haze drifting over Pinewood Meadows, a tidy little subdivision 20 miles outside Raleigh, where every house looks like it's auditioning for a suburban sitcom. I was sprawled in my beat-up folding chair, the one with the duct-taped armrest, sipping a cold IPA that was already sweating through the can, scrolling a BBQ forum on my phone. The debate of the day: spritz the ribs with apple cider vinegar at the 3-hour mark, or let the bark ride dry for that crisp snap. I was leaning dry when the doorbell hit me like a sledgehammer. 5 sharp staccato buzzes, like someone was trying to drill through the wall with their finger. I hauled myself up, cracked the front door, and there she was. Karen Dunwoody, HOA president. Clipboard clutched like a battle shield, iPhone poised to document my crimes, and a visor screaming community standards in Comic Sans so loud it could wake a coma patient. She didn't bother with a hello or even a nod, just thrust a laminated citation an inch from my nose and barked, "Richard, you're in violation of Bylaw 17B, unsanctioned open flames and excessive odor pollution. Cease and desist by Monday or it's a $5,000 fine. This isn't some hillbilly holler with a pig on a spit, it's a planned community." I stood there, jaw slack, glancing back at Bertha, puffing away like a loyal hound, her smoke curling lazily into the sky. "Karen," I said, slow and deliberate, keeping my voice level despite the heat rising in my chest. "It's a smoker. I've been running it every weekend for 6 years straight. Nobody's complained. Not Mrs. Lopez with her asthma, not Dave with his allergies, not even Phil, and that guy whines if a leaf lands on his driveway." She didn't flinch, just smirked, tapped her clipboard with a manicured nail painted bubblegum pink, and said, "Well, I'm complaining now. That thing's an eyesore, a fire hazard, and it stinks like a dumpster behind a butcher shop. Monday, Richard, or we'll take it for you." Then she spun on her flip-flops, white with rhinestone daisies that glittered like a discount tiara, and marched off down my walkway, leaving me with a warm beer, a rack of ribs in jeopardy, and a slow, simmering rage that had nothing to do with the cayenne. This wasn't about smoke. This was Karen flexing her petty little crown, and I'd just been drafted into her suburban Thunderdome. Let me set the scene proper, because this isn't just about ribs, it's about territory. I'm Rick, 45, divorced 3 years back after my ex, Jen, decided she'd rather chase yoga retreats in Sedona than stick around for what she called my meat obsession. No kids, unless you count Bertha, which I have to. She's got more personality than most people I know. I've been in Pinewood Meadows for a decade, a cookie-cutter sprawl of cul-de-sacs, 2-story colonials, and manicured lawns 20 miles outside Raleigh, where the biggest drama's usually who forgot to roll their trash bins in on pickup day or whose dog barked past 9 p.m. I bought my place, a modest 2,200 square foot job with beige siding, a 2-car garage I've turned into a spice lab, and a front porch that's seen better days. For the backyard, half an acre, flat as a pancake, with a concrete pad I poured myself for Bertha, complete with a built-in drainage slope because I'm not an amateur. BBQ's not just a hobby, it's my religion, my therapy, my middle finger to a world that's too damn uptight. I've got blue ribbons from the Memphis BBQ circuit, best ribs in 19, third place brisket in 21, a side hustle slinging spice rubs online, Rick's Rib Reaper, $12 a jar, ships to all 50 states and counting, and a YouTube channel with 50K subs where I break down pork shoulder like it's a physics equation, bark formation, collagen breakdown, the works. By day, I'm a fire inspector for Wake County, 12 years on the job, certified to red tag anything from a meth lab to a McDonald's fryer. But nights and weekends, I'm a pitmaster, chasing that perfect smoke ring, that crisp bark that snaps like a twig, that moment when you pull a rib and the meat slides off clean. The HOA's always been a background buzz, fussy about mailbox paint chips, must be Heritage Blue, no exceptions, Christmas light wattage, 40 watts max, and grass height, 3 inches, or you're a felon. But I've kept my dues paid, my lawn mowed to spec, and my smoker humming without a peep. Until Karen. Karen Dunwoody stormed into power last October like a hurricane in flip-flops, after Old Man Jenkins, the previous HOA president, bailed for Florida with his schnauzer, his golf cart, and a suitcase full of Hawaiian shirts he'd worn ironically. She's mid-50s, bleach blonde bob cut sharp enough to slice bread, perpetually tanned like she's got a UV lamp bolted to her Lexus dashboard. Speaking of which, she drives a leased RX 350, pearl white, that she parks diagonally across 2 spots at the community pool, daring anyone to call her out. Her husband Greg is a ghost, tall, balding, always in khakis and a polo, muttering "yes dear" like a wind-up toy whenever she snaps her fingers. She turned the HOA into her personal dictatorship faster than you can say bylaw amendment, rewriting rules like she was scripting a reality show. Last fall, she fined Mrs. Lopez $200 for planting marigolds instead of petunias, called it a visual disruption to the community palette. Made Jenkins repaint his shed because taupe isn't a community-approved neutral, even though he'd lived here 20 years and nobody cared. Banned inflatable Santas at Christmas, claiming they clashed with the aesthetic vision of Pinewood Meadows, and sent out a 12-page newsletter with photos of acceptable decorations, all of which coincidentally matched her front yard. Most of us grumbled, paid up, or ignored her, figuring she'd burn out eventually. But now she'd locked onto Bertha, and I wasn't about to let some power-tripping Karen with a laminated vendetta snuff out my weekend soul food. Sunday morning, I figured I'd try the civilized route, kill her with kindness, or at least with calories. I plated up a half rack of Saturday's ribs, fall off the bone, glistening with my honey chipotle glaze that's got a cult following on my channel, with fans mailing me letters from as far as Austin begging for the recipe. I grabbed a 6-pack of IPA from the fridge, local brew, nothing fancy, and trekked over to Karen's McMansion, 3 doors down on Magnolia Lane. Her place was a shrine to control, shrubs trimmed into perfect cubes like they'd been measured with a ruler, a no soliciting sign in cursive so ornate it looked like it belonged on a wedding cake, and a Ring doorbell that blinked red when I stepped up, probably running facial recognition or texting her a threat assessment. Her lawn was pristine, chemically green, not a weed in sight, with a flagpole flying an American flag and an HOA banner underneath, both flapping in the breeze like she was staking a claim. I rang the bell, plastering on my best "let's be neighbors" grin, and when she opened the door, still in that visor, now paired with a velour tracksuit that said "Boss Babe" in rhinestones across the chest, I held out the plate like a peace offering. "Karen," I said, keeping my tone light, "let's talk this out. Nobody's dying from a little smoke. Hell, it's half the reason folks walk their dogs past my place. Try these ribs, maybe crack a beer with me. They've got fans in Texas, and those guys don't mess around with BBQ." She didn't even glance at the plate, just crossed her arms, visor casting a shadow over her sneer, and said, "I don't negotiate with fire hazards, Richard. That monstrosity's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Smoke inhalation, property damage, you name it. And I'm not poisoning myself with your greasy little bribe or drinking your cheap swill. Monday, it's gone or you're gone. End of discussion." Then she slammed the door so hard the faux stained glass panel rattled, and a wreath shaped like a pineapple, hospitality my ass, thudded to the porch, rolling into her azaleas. I stood there, ribs cooling, sauce congealing, 6-pack dangling from my hand, and a realization sinking in. Karen didn't just hate my smoker, she hated me, or at least what I stood for, freedom, flavor, anything that didn't salute her laminated rulebook. Diplomacy was dead on arrival. Time to get my hands dirty. Monday dawned like a steamroller, hot, humid, and heavy with the promise of chaos. I didn't touch Bertha. Instead, I doubled down, loaded her up with a 12-pound pork shoulder I'd brined overnight in apple juice, kosher salt, and a splash of bourbon, set her to 225 degrees, and let the applewood smoke roll out thick and sweet, a cloud so dense you could taste it 2 blocks away. If Karen wanted war, she'd choke on it. I spent the morning tending the firebox, tweaking the vents, sipping coffee from a thermos, and ignoring the occasional neighbor peering over the fence. Mrs. Lopez waved, Dave gave a thumbs up, even Phil peeked out but scurried back inside like a spooked squirrel. By noon, I was basting the shoulder with a mop sauce, vinegar, beer, a dash of my rub, when I heard the rumble. A tow truck, flatbed gleaming like a predator's teeth, growled up my driveway, kicking up gravel and rattling my mailbox. Behind it, Karen's Lexus screeched in, tires squealing like she'd just robbed a bank. She hopped out, visor tilted like a general's cap, live streaming on her iPhone to the HOA Facebook page, her voice cutting through the air like a foghorn. "Here we are, Pinewood Meadows," she narrated, panning the camera across my yard, "removing a dangerous nuisance from our streets. This is what happens when you defy community standards." 2 beefy guys in stained coveralls lumbered off the truck, tattoos snaking up their arms, one chewing a toothpick like he was auditioning for a biker flick, hooked chains to Bertha with the finesse of a demolition crew and started dragging her across my lawn. The chains clanked, the steel groaned, and ruts gouged deep into the grass I'd spent years babying with fertilizer, a push mower, and a sprinkler system I'd installed myself. I bolted out, IPA sloshing in my hand, yelling, "What the hell? You can't just take my property, this is theft." Karen waved a paper in my face, HOA letterhead, her signature scrawled in red ink like a dictator's decree, and said, "Eminent domain, Rick. Charter says we can seize hazards, pay the $5,000 fine, and maybe you'll learn to respect the rules. The truck hauled Bertha off, tires squealing as they peeled out, leaving a $200 towing bill pinned to my door with a smiley face sticky note that felt like a slap. I squinted at the truck as it vanished around the corner. Dunwoody Hauling, her cousin Robbie's outfit. This wasn't just petty, it was a family racket, and I was the sucker caught in the net. That night, I cracked a stout, okay, maybe 3, maybe 4, and dug into the HOA bylaws, a 200-page tombstone of fine print I'd skimmed once when I signed the deed and never touched again. I brewed a pot of coffee, grabbed a highlighter, and settled into my kitchen table, a rickety IKEA thing Jen left behind, determined to find a crack in Karen's armor. 2 hours in, my eyes burning and my mug empty, I struck gold on page 87, buried under a section titled Property Seizure Protocols. Eminent domain seizure requires a quorum vote of the HOA board, minimum 3 members present, and 48-hour written notice to the resident, delivered via certified mail with signature confirmation. No vote, no notice, not even a text, an email, or a carrier pigeon. Karen had gone full rogue, banking on nobody cracking the code or calling her bluff. I leaned back, grinning despite the caffeine jitters, and muttered, "Gotcha, you visor-wearing lunatic." I could have filed a complaint with the board. Phil and Janet might have listened if I bribed them with ribs, or dragged Bertha back through small claims court, but that was too clean, too quiet. She'd humiliated me on live video. Mrs. Lopez texted me the link. It was up to 300 views by 8 p.m., with comments like "Karen's the real hazard, LOL," and "Save the smoker, Rick." And I wasn't about to slink away with my tail between my legs. I had a sharper weapon in my arsenal, one Karen didn't see coming. See, being a fire inspector isn't just about checking smoke alarms or handing out citations to greasy diners. I've got the power to red tag anything that doesn't meet code. Houses, sheds, clubhouses, whole damn subdivisions if I stretch it, and I'd bet my last rib Pinewood Meadows was a tinderbox of violations waiting to be torched. Karen wanted to play fire cop? I'd burn her little empire to the ground. Figuratively, of course, I'm a professional. Tuesday morning, I suited up, county-issued polo with the Wake County seal, badge clipped to my belt, clipboard in hand, and a tablet loaded with the full NFPA codebook, and hit the streets under the guise of routine safety compliance checks. I'd done this gig long enough to know how to make it look legit. Walk slow, squint at things, scribble notes nobody could read. First stop, Karen's McMansion. I strolled her backyard like I was on a nature hike, whistling Sweet Home Alabama to keep it casual, and it was a goldmine of screw-ups. 6 tiki torches lined her patio, unpermitted spaced 2 feet from a wooden fence when code demands 5, with fuel cans leaking into the mulch, a Class B fire hazard begging for a spark. Her deck had a gas grill with a hose so frayed it looked like a dog had chewed it, and the propane tank was rusted, dented, and missing its safety cap, another violation, NFPA 58, Section 5.2. I snapped photos with my tablet, typed up a report citing every infraction down to the subsection, and by 5 p.m., a $500 fine was taped to her door with a note. Correct by Friday or face structural seizure and impoundment of hazardous equipment. Wake County Fire Inspector R. Delaney. She called me at 8 p.m., voice shrill enough to shatter my windows. "This is retaliation, Rick. I'll have your badge, your job, your house. I'll sue you into the dirt." I leaned back in my chair, sipping a stout, feet propped on the coffee table, and said, "No, Karen, it's code. NFPA 1, Section 10.10 and 58, Section 5.2. You want to sling bylaws at me? I've got the whole damn fire manual, and it's got teeth. Fix your torches, your grill, your tank, or I'll padlock your backyard and haul it all hacksaw into the county yard." She screamed something incoherent, sounded like tyrant and conspiracy, and hung up, but I wasn't stopping there. Wednesday, I hit the HOA clubhouse, Karen's crown jewel, a squat brick building with a pitched roof and a sign out front that said, Pinewood Meadows Community Center, in gold letters. She held her monthly community vision meetings there, complete with PowerPoints about mulch uniformity and approved mailbox fonts. Inside, it was a disaster. Exposed wiring in the ceiling from a botched light install 2 years back, bare copper dangling like a snake, fire extinguishers 6 months past inspection, tags faded and pins rusted, and a propane grill out back with no permit, no clearance from the wall, and a tank that hissed when I tapped it, a slow leak begging for a boom. I slapped a red tag on the door, closed for imminent hazard, and padlocked it with a county-issued lock while Phil, the board's mousy treasurer with a comb-over, and Janet, the secretary with a perm straight out of 1985, gawked from the parking lot. "You can't do this," Phil squeaked, clutching a bag of Cheetos, orange dust on his fingers. Janet nodded, her jello mold voice wobbling. "Karen won't stand for it." I grinned, twirling my keys. Tell it to the county, folks. Call me when it's up to spec. Probably $2,000 in repairs. Ballpark. Electrical's a bitch. Karen didn't just escalate, she went full nuclear meltdown. Thursday morning, the HOA Facebook page lit up with a manifesto that read like a fever dream. Rick's abusing his power to terrorize our peaceful community. That smoker's a biohazard, carcinogens, carbon monoxide, toxic fumes. He's poisoning our children, our pets, our property values. I've consulted experts and we're taking action. By noon, she'd rolled up to my house with reinforcements. Her nephew Tyler, a gangly 20-something, fresh out of community college with a C- in Intro to Biology, decked out in a lab coat he'd nabbed from a Halloween store and safety goggles that kept slipping down his nose. He waddled around my yard waving a dollar store thermometer, the kind you use for a turkey, not air quality, and a spiral notebook, muttering about particulate matter and PM 2.5 levels like he'd watched a YouTube video on pollution 5 minutes ago. Karen trailed him, filming on her iPhone, narrating with the gravitas of a war correspondent. We've hired an independent health inspector to expose this menace to Pinewood Meadows. Look at him testing the air. See the danger. Tyler poked at my grass with a stick, scribbled something on a napkin, looked like unsafe with a doodle of a skull and crossbones, and handed it to her with a nod like he'd just cracked the Da Vinci Code. She marched to my porch, banged on the door with the heel of her hand, and when I opened it, arms crossed, coffee in hand, still in my work boots, she shoved the napkin at me. $10,000 for environmental cleanup, Rick, or we sue you into next year. This is a public health crisis. I laughed so hard I nearly choked, coffee sloshing onto my shirt, then wiped my eyes and said, Karen, your inspector couldn't test a puddle for mud. This is a napkin, not a report. Take your circus and shove it. She puffed up, visor trembling, and hissed, You'll see, Rick. You'll see. I called the county health department while she was still in my driveway, and by 3 p.m., Tyler was cited for impersonating a public official, $1,000 fine, 20 hours community service, and a stern warning from a health officer who couldn't stop laughing. Karen didn't let up. By dusk, she'd papered every mailbox in the neighborhood with flyers screaming, Rick's BBQ terror threatens our way of life. Demand action. In bold red font, complete with a blurry photo of Bertha she'd snapped from her livestream. The block split like a brisket fresh off the pit. Half thought she'd lost her marbles. Mrs. Lopez called her that banshee with a visor over a glass of iced tea on her porch, while the other half ate her drama like it was free pulled pork, whispering about toxins and lawsuits at the mailbox cluster. Fridays when the plot thickened like a gumbo left on the stove too long. My buddy Dave, a tow truck driver who moonlights at Dunwoody Hauling, called me at lunch, voice low like he was spilling state secrets. Rick, man, they've got Bertha in the back lot behind Robbie's shop. Chain link fence, padlocked gate, the works. He's stripping her, selling the grates to a scrap guy in Durham, the firebox to some hipster brewery in Cary that wants it for a patio vibe. Says Karen told him it's fair game since you didn't pay the fine, and he's bragging about turning a profit. I grabbed my county gear, polo, badge, tablet, and a flashlight for good measure, and drove over, pulling into the lot like I was raiding a chop shop. The manager, Carl, a sweaty guy with a mullet, a vape pen dangling from his lip, and a gut that strained his Dunwoody Hauling t-shirt, froze when I flashed my badge. Where's my smoker? I said, voice flat as asphalt, stepping close enough to smell the cherry vape cloud. Carl stammered, wiping his brow. We, thought it was abandoned. No paperwork, just Karen's word. I pointed at the Rick's ribs I'd welded onto the side in 18. Block letters, still legible despite the dents. It's got my damn name on it, Carl. That's theft. Grand larceny, actually. Bertha's worth $3,000 easy, probably more on the custom market. Cough her up, or I'm calling the sheriff and red tagging this whole junkyard for hazardous storage. Those oil drums back there look mighty cozy next to that propane stack. He scrambled, yelling at a kid in the back named Joey, pimply, barely 18, hauling a wrench to get the damn smoker. 20 minutes later, they wheeled her out on a dolly, dented, grates missing, firebox gouged, chimney bent like a drinking straw, but still Bertha, still mine. I hitched her to my F-150 with a tow strap I keep in the bed, grinning as Robbie stormed out of the office, a wiry guy with a goatee and a Dunwoody Hauling cap pulled low. I'll sue the county, you prick. This is harassment. My lawyer's gonna eat you alive. I waved over my shoulder, backing out. Tell it to the judge, cousin. Bring receipts, and a better story than Karen said so. Saturday, I went all in, through the biggest BBQ Pinewood Meadows had ever seen, a middle finger to Karen's reign of terror. Friday night, I'd sent a mass text to the block. Free food, my yard, 4 p.m. tomorrow. Bring a side if you want, or just show up hungry. I've got enough meat to feed an army. I spent the morning prepping like it was a competition cook-off. 50 pounds of meat, 2 racks of ribs, a 14-pound brisket I'd trimmed and rubbed at dawn, a pork shoulder, and 3 whole chickens for the faint of heart, or the vegetarians who'd wandered into the wrong zip code. I patched Bertha up with duct tape, a spare grate from my garage, and a whole lot of spite, then fired her up at 8 a.m., letting the smoke roll out thick and proud. By 4 p.m., neighbors started trickling in, Mrs. Lopez with her famous cornbread, still warm from the oven, dotted with jalapenos. Dave with a cooler of IPAs and a grin that said, "I'm here for the chaos." Phil with a timid, "I brought chips," clutching a bag of Lay's like it was a peace offering. Janet with a Jell-O mold that wobbled like her resolve, green with pineapple chunks suspended in it like fossils. Kids chased each other with sparklers left over from the 4th, adults set up folding chairs and card tables, and someone, Dave probably, cranked a Bluetooth speaker with Johnny Cash, Ring of Fire echoing across the yard. By 6 p.m., my half-acre was a festival, 70 people, a haze of smoke so thick you could cut it, and a vibe that screamed, "Screw the HOA, we're free." Then Karen crashed it, naturally, megaphone in hand, visor gleaming under the setting sun, voice blaring like a tornado siren. "This is an illegal gathering, no permit, no approval from the board. Disperse or I'm fining every last one of you $500. Cash or check, due Monday." Nobody moved. Mrs. Lopez, 80 years old, 5 feet of pure grit in a floral muumuu, grabbed a pitcher of sweet tea off the picnic table, shuffled over with her cane tapping the grass, and dumped it square on Karen's head, yelling, "Shut your trap and eat some damn brisket, you banshee." The crowd erupted. Cheers, laughs, phones out filming as Karen stood there, soaked, mascara streaking down her face like black tears, megaphone fritzing out with a high-pitched whine. She screeched, "You'll all regret this. I'll have this whole block condemned. I've got connections." And stormed off, tea dripping down her boss babe tracksuit, leaving a trail of sugar water and shame across my lawn. Dave slapped my back, laughing. "She's done, man, done." Sunday morning, I woke to chaos. Sirens screaming, red lights flashing through my blinds like a bad action movie. I stumbled outside in boxers, a faded Metallica t-shirt, and flip-flops, rubbing sleep from my eyes, to find 3 fire trucks, 2 cop cars, and Karen in my yard, pointing at Bertha like it was a nuclear warhead. "He's rigged it to explode," she yelled to the fire chief, waving her arms like a deranged cheerleader. "Smoke bombs, chemical weapons. I saw him pouring something in there last night, I swear." The chief, Tom, my poker buddy from way back, big guy, red mustache, smells like Old Spice, raised an eyebrow and ambled over to Bertha, where a pork butt was sizzling at 250 degrees, smoke clean and steady. He poked around, checked the firebox, lifted the lid to peek at the meat, and chuckled, wiping his hands on his pants. "Rick, your smoker's safer than my station's grill. Hell, this pork looks good enough to eat now. What's her deal?" I shrugged, leaning against the porch rail. "She's Karen, Tom. Lost her damn mind." Then a cop, a rookie with a buzz cut and a notepad, pulled me aside, face grim. We traced her 911 call, spoofed it through a burner app, routed through some sketchy VPN, felony-level false reporting, plus wasting emergency resources. She's toast. They cuffed her mid-rant. "This is tyranny. I'm the victim here. You're all in on it." And the megaphone clattered to the grass as neighbors filmed, jaws dropped, kids peeking from behind fences. Phil sidled up, whispering, "She's been skimming dues, $20,000 over 2 years, maybe more. Funneled it to Robbie's towing gig, fake invoices, cash drops. We found the receipts in her office last week, locked in a drawer she thought we'd never check." I whistled long and low. Well, hot damn, Phil, that's a plot twist. Monday, the HOA board met without her. Phil, Janet, and 3 others crammed into the clubhouse I'd unlocked for the occasion, red tag dangling from the door like a scarlet letter. They voted 5-0 to dissolve the HOA, citing gross mismanagement, financial misconduct, and irreparable community division. Phil read a statement to the dozen neighbors who showed up, mostly to gawk, his voice shaking but firm. Effective immediately, Pinewood Meadows is HOA free. Dues are suspended, bylaws void, we're done. By noon, the local news, Kavukdu's had it. HOA tyrant busted in BBQ revenge. Plot, subdivision goes rogue, complete with a grainy still of Karen in cuffs. My BBQ went viral, Mrs. Lopez's tea dump hit 2 million views on TikTok overnight, remixed with trap beats and captioned Rib Guy vs. Karen, the smokening. Bertha got a full makeover, red, white, and blue paint. Freedom Smoker stenciled in bold across the side, a new set of grates I ordered overnight from a guy in Charlotte who'd seen my channel. The county gave me a plaque at a ceremony Wednesday, polished wood, brass lettering, for exemplary fire safety enforcement, Richard Delaney, and I hung it in the garage next to my spice racks. I started a weekly BBQ night, Sundays at dusk, toll-free for ex-HOA refugees. Bring a chair and a side if you're feeling generous. Karen, she copped a plea. Tuesday, 6 months probation, banned from community boards statewide, ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution to the HOA fund she drained. Last I saw her, she was working at Robbie's lot, scrubbing grease off tow hooks with a toothbrush, visor gone, tracksuit swapped for a stained Dunwoody hauling shirt. Sometimes I fire up Bertha extra loud, let the smoke drift her way, just a little nudge. You don't mess with a man's ribs. Not in Pinewood Meadows, not on my watch. But it didn't end there. Oh no, Karen's shadow lingered like smoke in a closed room. Tuesday afternoon, Dave called again, voice tight. Rick, you won't believe this. Robbie's selling knockoff Rib Reaper rubs at his lot. Jars lined up on a card table, $8 a pop, says he reverse engineered it from Bertha's grates, scraped the residue or some crap. I drove over Wednesday, badge in pocket, and caught him red-handed. Dozens of jars labeled Robbie's Rib Rub in a font that looked suspiciously like mine, down to the cayenne kick I could smell from 10 feet away. I called my lawyer, Tony, a pitmaster pal from Memphis who'd once sued a BBQ joint for stealing his sauce recipe and won a cool $50,000. By Thursday, we'd filed a cease and desist for trademark theft. Turns out I'd registered Rib Reaper 2 years back on a whim, and Tony was salivating for a courtroom showdown. Friday, the county health inspector, not Tyler, a real one this time, a guy named Carl with a clipboard and a no-nonsense squint, shut Robbie's operation down for unpermitted food production in an unsanitary facility, citing oil stains and rat droppings near the jars. Robbie flipped out, kicking a tire in the lot while Carl taped a citation to his office door, and I watched from across the street, sipping a coffee, grinning like a bastard. Saturday, Karen showed up at my door, no visor, no clipboard, just a wild look in her eye and a suitcase parked on my walkway. You've ruined everything, she hissed, voice low and venomous. My marriage. Greg left me last night, said I'm unhinged. My reputation, nobody returns my calls. I'm moving to Florida, Rick, where people respect order and don't worship hunks of metal. I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. Send me a postcard, Karen. Don't forget the sunscreen. Heard it's brutal down there. She glared, grabbed her suitcase, and peeled out in her Lexus, the last I'd see of her. Sunday, Pinewood Meadows threw a block party. No HOA, no rules, just ribs, brisket, and a keg. Dave hauled in. Bertha smoked on, neighbors danced to Cash and Springsteen, and I knew this was my turf now, one fair and square, with fire, meat, and a little county muscle. Karen was gone, but the legend of the smokening? That'd live forever. Monday rolled around, and the aftermath kept piling up. Phil stopped by with a manila folder, more dirt on Karen's scam. She didn't just skim dues, he said, eyes wide. She'd been forging signatures on vendor contracts, landscaping, pool maintenance, diverting cash to Robbie and some shell company called Dunwoody Enterprises. We're talking $40,000 over 3 years. I whistled, flipping through the papers, fake invoices, bank statements, a sticky note with Greg, don't tell, in her handwriting. She's lucky she only got probation, I said. Phil nodded. Cops are still digging, might be more charges if they tie it to Robbie's books. Tuesday, the news ran a follow-up. HOA scandal deepens. Ex-president's towing ties under investigation. Robbie's lot got raided Wednesday. Sheriff's deputies hauling out filing cabinets, Carl chain-smoking by the gate, muttering about damn family. Thursday, I got a call from Tony. Robbie's countersuing, claims you planted the rub idea to frame him. It's bullshit, but we'll bury him in discovery. Got a deposition next week. Bring your spice jars. I laughed. He's dumber than a bag of hammers, Tony. Let's cook him. Friday, the neighborhood settled into a new rhythm. No flyers, no fines, just quiet. Mrs. Lopez baked me a pan of cornbread as a thank you. Dave dropped off a six-pack, and Phil, nervous, twitchy Phil, asked if he could join the Sunday BBQs. I don't cook, he said, but I can bring chips. Maybe dip? I clapped him on the shoulder. You're in, man, bring whatever, just no Jell-O. Janet's got that covered. Saturday, I took Bertha for a test run. New grates gleaming, a brisket slow cooking, and posted a video to my channel, The Freedom Smoke, how we beat the HOA. It hit 100K views by Sunday, subs pouring in, orders for Rib Reaper spiking. Monday, a package arrived, postmarked Florida, no return address. Inside, a single flip-flop with a rhinestone daisy and a note. You win, Rick. For now. I laughed, tossed it in the trash, and fired up Bertha. Karen was gone, but the war? It had left a mark, a smoky, delicious mark, and Pinewood Meadows was mine to grill.